Note-taking is an important skill in and out of school. It can make the difference between passing and failing a test, excelling at a job, or even enjoying a complicated movie. And most of us don't do it well. Welcome to Wellcast. We took a viewer suggestion for this week's episode, the art of note-taking. We're going to give you a 3-step method for taking notes that will actually help you learn. Numerous studies over the years have proven what's already pretty obvious. People who take notes remember the material better than those who don't. But how much better? A 1970 study by developmental psychologist Michael Howe found that students were 7 times more likely to remember facts 1 week after hearing them if they took notes. But here's the thing. Most people don't know how to take notes.
Hey guys, it's DJ from the Office of Student Success. Wanted to stop the video right there. I think it's going to be a great video to help you, but I kind of want to be able to step in and out as the video plays on. So before we go any further, I wanted to introduce my own philosophy on student note-taking. So a lot of people have trouble note-taking because they don't understand how to do it. They don't understand the process of it, and they don't understand why they're doing it. And it's boring. I mean, class time is boring, especially if you're not listening to something that you think is interesting. It could be boring. Now, what I want you to understand is that there's a philosophy that I have come up with that is more easy to understand with note-taking. And the way that I break it down is by storytelling. So behind me you can see written on the chalkboard the word story. So what if we broke down every class as if we were hearing a story? Because essentially that's what we're doing. So let's look at it this way. So let's break it down a little bit. We've all heard stories before, and the universal thing about a story is that it's structured the same. You have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. So think about the stories that you've heard. I'm sure that it's not going to be that hard for you to come up with a story that you've heard in the past. Okay, so let's break it down. Your buddy calls you up and says, hey, you're not going to believe what happened to me at work. Proceeds to tell you a story. You listen to that story, you think it's funny, you might laugh. You store that story, and then later you probably retold that story, right? Yeah, that happens to us all the time. Or you're watching a TV show, which is a story. You watch a movie, which is a story, or you read an actual story. Now, if somebody calls you up and goes, hey, I missed this week's episode, can you tell me what happened? You retell them the story, right? Because you process that information. You listen intently, and you process the information. Have you ever told yourself, that reminds me of a story? Or have you ever been in a group of friends or at work or at school or at lunch and you hear information and then you say, hey guys, I have a story that relates to that? Well, essentially what you're doing is years ago you were listening to a story, you process that information, and then years down the road you say to yourself, hey, I remember that story, it relates to this information, and I'm going to tell it. Okay? So with that said, the next time you're in a classroom, think of it this way. Instead of the professor lecturing to you, he's telling you a story. So what you need to understand is, what is the story that's being told in this classroom? And then what you have to do is, just like when you hear a story at a fire ring, you listen to it, you process it, and then later in life you're going to have to regurgitate it, because that's what a test is. A test is you are regurgitating the story, and you have to retell the story. So I think what I'm really trying to tell you is that the story of this lesson is that that's how note-taking works.
We're taught from a very young age that when a teacher starts delivering a load of information, for example, Shakespeare described Romeo and Juliet's love as star-crossed, that we should start writing down as much of what they're saying as possible. Phew! Well, this is an incredibly inefficient way to take notes. The average student takes notes at a rate of 1/3 of a word per second. The average teacher speaks about 2 to 3 words per second. Bottom line, if you're trying to copy down everything your teacher is saying while he drones on about Shakespeare, you're going to fall seriously behind. You're not actually learning anything. You're simply acting as a human audio recorder. A recorder, by the way, that only picks up 1 out of every 10 words. And you're saving the learning for later, when you'll have an even less complete lesson plan to look over. Note-taking should actually act as a form of learning. Something that helps you work your way through the lesson as the teacher is giving it, so that when you leave the classroom, already understand the concepts. So how do you do that? We have a 3-step method for taking the kind of notes that force you to learn the material inside the classroom and not out. Pause and print this sheet and put it in your binder, ready for your next class. Finished? Okay, let's go. Step 1, don't write down facts. Write down conclusions. Don't worry about capturing every single thing your teacher is saying. Spend more time listening and trying to understand the lecture. When you do start writing, format your notes as a series of questions posed by the teacher's lecture and fill in your own answers. For example, question: what is the central theme in Romeo and Juliet? Conclusion: more than being a tragic love story, Romeo and Juliet is about the consequences of deeply held grudges. This way, you're recording the importance of what the teacher is saying and not just raw facts. When you do need to include data, add only the most important points under each question. This is the evidence for each question.
Okay, let's stop right there and kind of talk about that for a second. So the film is right. We shouldn't be writing down everything that we hear, okay? Because not only are we hearing a story, but we're also trying to learn. So we do have to process what is being said and learn. So what happens is a lot of students fall into this misconception that we have to write down every single thing that's being said, every single thing that's on the slideshow, every single thing that, every question that's asked, no, we don't. Instead of writing down everything that you hear, write down everything that you've learned, okay? So if you hear something and it's new to you and you say, oh, I never knew that before, write that down. If you hear something that sounds like a key point, or it sounds like a good idea, or it sounds like an answer to a test question, then write that down, because that's something that you've learned, okay? So let's get back to the story theme though, because remember, we're gonna have to retell this story one day. So when you're listening to a story, you take the key points away from it, okay? Because later down the road, you're gonna retell that story. So let's get back into the analogy of telling a story. So you hear a story, okay? And then a couple days down the road, you're telling your buddy that story. When you're telling your buddy that story, you're not telling the exact word for word story that you heard 4 days ago. No, you're not. You're telling it with your own personal touch. You're telling it with your own words. But you are telling the same story. It's just you're not going through word for word like a robot repeating everything that you heard. And you shouldn't do that in the classroom either. You listen to what the story is. You learn something new about the story, and you write down what you learned, and you write down the key points. So when you're in the classroom and you're taking notes, think to yourself, what are the key points in this story that I need to be able to retell that later? Not everything that's being said, right? Some things in the story don't matter. Some things in the classroom don't matter either. There are key points. You gotta find those key points, right? So, let's get back to the video.
Step 2, use colored pens. Yeah, that's right. This will help you remember your notes visually. Also, if you establish a set template for your notes, you'll be able to take them more efficiently. Write questions in red and definitions in blue, conclusions in green?
Yeah, so basically what the lady in the video is trying to say is categorize it your own personal way. Write your notes in a way that you can read them later and understand. It's not good when you're writing down notes and then later you're reading them to study and you're like, I have no idea what I just wrote. No idea. So what you want to do is you want to organize it in a way that you understand it. Put your own little personal thing and write down the things that you're hearing. Write them in your own words. Don't write down what the professor's saying, because sometimes the professor will say something and you don't understand what he's saying. But you learn it and you say, oh, okay, I understand that. You write it in a way that you understand it so that later, a couple days down the road, when you're reading your notes, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Also, organize it the way that you want to organize it. You know, this is just an example that I did. I got some arrows right here. It's just the way that I do it. organize it the way that you want. She's telling you to do it color-coded. If you want to do it that way, do it that way. You don't have to do it that way. Just make sure that you understand what your notes are so that you can retell the story later. Does that make sense? All right, let's get back.
Step 3, review your notes. Don't relearn them. Spend at least 10 minutes organizing your notes after class. If you want to test your comprehension, try teaching the material to a classmate. This will be a great marker to see if you've actually learned anything. Note-taking is a valuable life skill that doesn't lose its utility when you graduate. Find ways to integrate note-taking in your daily life. You'll soon find yourself in the exclusive and creative group of people who bring out their moleskins at lectures, movies, and TED Talks.
All right, so let's do a little recap on what we learned today. The video does a recap, but she does it in this really, really annoying Victorian age British accent. She tries to stick with the Romeo and Juliet thing, and I don't want you guys listening to that because it's horrible. It's horrible. So, what did we learn today? Well, we learned that note-taking comes along with the theme of storytelling. When you're in the classroom, just picture your professor. She's telling you a story, and you need to listen to that story, learn from that story, process that information, take the main ideas from that story, put them in your notes so that you can retell that story later in life. Because honestly, that's what a test is. Your exam is they're asking you to retell that story. What did you learn? And can you retell it to us? So the video kind of gets into what we're going to do next week. Towards the tail end of the video, they start talking about some ways that we can review our notes and studying for tests. Next week, we'll go into study skills, but I do like what the video says about sharing your notes with your friends. Sometimes that helps, and sometimes you share your notes with your friends. Sometimes you can compare your notes to your friends. You might have better notes, they might have better notes, but hey, we need the best notes that we can have, right? So take that with you. I really hope that this methodology works for you, because it's something that I came up with last fall. It really worked for me. It's working for some of my students in the past. I put it in my own portfolio as my own teaching philosophy. So I hope it works, because I'm gonna really push this in my own life, but also in my future students' lives as well. So let me know if it works for you. I'm gonna create a question for the email about does it work for you, and I want you to be honest. Tell me if it works. It might be a little too soon to really get a good understanding if it does work, but I really think it will, because storytelling is awesome. We all like hearing stories. We all gathered around when we were kids, and we still do. We all love to hear a story. So I think this method will work for you. I hope it works for you. So let me know. Answer all the questions this week in your email. You have a week to answer it. And please answer it with proper etiquette. It's very important. All right, guys, that's all I have for you. I hope that this note-taking lesson really, really worked for you. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope that it'll help you in your academic career. All right? You guys have a blessed week, and I'll see you next week.
Did these tips help? Let us know. Or if you have a wellness topic that you'd like to see covered, shoot us an email. We'd love to see your notes. Oh, man. Tweet us at WatchWellcast. Email us at watchwellcast@gmail.com or leave a comment down below. We'll see you next time.